The critics called the Michael movie propaganda. They said it was a sanitized attempt to save a reputation and a cash grab by an estate. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a dismal 38%. But while the media was busy tearing it apart, the fans were busy breaking records to the tune of $423 million as of May 4. Why is there such a massive divide between what the experts see and how the world feels? I'm not just here to talk about Michael the movie. I'm here to talk about a childhood shaped by Michael Jackson and the visceral feelings that came up when I finally sat in that theater. While many of these criticisms may not be unfounded, fans were already convinced that despite these reviews, their curiosity was off the charts. And curiosity is even an understatement. They simply wanted to experience Michael Jackson once again. I wouldn't really consider myself a part of the Michael Jackson fandom, but growing up in the 90s, he was a huge part of my pop culture laden childhood. He was everywhere, and I had the opportunity to experience his latest music firsthand. I was already a semi conscious kid at the time when he released Will You Be There? One of my favorite songs as a 3-year-old kid, especially since it's part of the movie Free Willy, which I also liked at that time. And yes, if you're curious about being a 3-year-old, yes, my parents told me that as young as 1 or 2, I could already recognize the melodies of pop tunes. So, of course, accountable for this is my father, who was a big Michael Jackson fan. As a true blue music fan, it was already instinctive or reflexive for me to watch the King of Pop's biopic. And so I looked forward to the cast, especially Jaafar, MJ's nephew, who portrayed him. MJ passed away in 2009, the same year that one of our former presidents in my country also died. And I remember feeling sad about MJ's death, even though a friend of mine mocked me, thinking that I was just following a trend. However, when the president passed away, I didn't feel anything at all. While I may not be among the top 100,000 fans of MJ, I would certainly place myself in the top 1 million. So I ask you to take this review as something more personal, because when I watched Michael, there were feelings. And I know that you can relate to that too. The initial feeling I experienced was sorrow, as I watched it without my late father and regretted that he wasn't there to share in the experience. And I had seen the Freddie Mercury biopic with him, so my feelings were really strong about this. And also the Freddie Mercury biopic were produced by the same people as Michael's. Now, I experienced strong emotions in the movie on at least 2 occasions. First was when, as a child, Michael longed to play with other children but couldn't. The second was when his father physically punished him for being defiant. And I was also moved during the scenes where he read Peter Pan repeatedly. The movie actually primarily showcased the heartwarming moments of Michael Jackson, like his visits to sick children in the hospital, his love and devotion for animals, and of course, the creation of his biggest hits, including Thriller, which was my #1 favorite music video as a kid. I was also aware of how childlike Michael was, shopping for toys and playing fun games like Twister, especially since he missed out on much of his own childhood. His incredible relationship with his mother, Katherine, and his bodyguard, Bill Bray, were also demonstrated perfectly. They also showcased a glimpse of Michael's creative process, highlighting how he worked with Quincy Jones. And in his creative process, MJ would pause, relax, and wait for inspiration from God. And he even once said, "If I'm not there to receive these ideas, God might give them to Prince." Now, I've always known that both MJ and Prince were very spiritual, which is one of the reasons I admire them. And while people often compare them, they share a mutual respect and love for each other's artistry. Another key scene that actually I didn't know and that shocked me in the movie was when it was revealed that MTV had not played music videos by black artists at that time, around 1982 or 1983. Walter Yetnikoff, the president of CBS, to threaten MTV. He stated that he would pull all their artists if they didn't include Thriller in their rotation. And this situation publicly exposed MTV's early racism. The cast was outstanding. Juliano Valdi gave an impressive performance as young Michael. He was discovered while performing as a Michael Jackson impersonator and auditioned for the role. The kid has great dance moves and is also an excellent singer. He performed ABC, and although his voice was mixed with the original MJ recordings, he did a great job. And based on their guestings, Juliano is ambitious, and I look forward to seeing more of him in both the movie and music industries. Now, let's move on to Jaafar Jackson. I've seen almost every interview with him recounting how he first got the role and how he prepared for it. Well, Jaafar was perfect, period. His voice, dance, and energy all embodied Michael Jackson. As a moviegoer and entertainment enthusiast, I don't often find myself astonished by many portrayals in biopics. However, in Michael, I was repeatedly awestruck throughout the film. Jaafar truly captured Michael's essence, almost as if he were possessed by Michael's spirit. And we all have criticisms about nepotism, but it's important to recognize that Jaafar was truly fit and made for the role. First, he has the right DNA. He's got the Jackson moves and soulful tone. You can't deny it. And I listened to Jaafar's single, Got Me Singing, which was released in 2019. And he really sounded like Michael in the first line. And I also saw some of his performances pre-Michael preparation, and he truly sounds like MJ amongst all the Jacksons. Perhaps he really looked up to his uncle. And yes, he actually did. So while he certainly has his own unique style, he is perfect for playing Michael Jackson. If I were the producer for Michael, I would have also considered Jaafar for the role. And additionally, Jaafar shares a close bond with his uncle, having observed him not just a pop star, but also as, of course, an uncle, a friend, a brother, a son, and a father. He witnessed the full spectrum of his uncle's life. Many people had portrayed Michael from past movies, series, and musicals, but they lacked that special interaction that Jaafar did with his uncle. And this connection made it easier for Jaafar, yet he still did a wonderful job. And I recognize all the pressure and hard work he put into this movie, and I salute him for that. While watching Michael, I initially felt that, like Bohemian Rhapsody, it was sanitized. However, I eventually found myself grateful for this sanitation. I realized that I wouldn't be able to handle a more intense biopic that delves into all the hardships Michael faced when he was a child, when he was growing up, and transitioning into adulthood, where he experienced all the cruelties the world had to offer. And I have a different take on Freddie Mercury, or the Bohemian Rhapsody. I wanted to see all of that debauchery in his life and his wrong choices as much as I wanted to experience his genius and authenticity as an artist and a great human being who, like Michael, loves animals, especially cats. However, in the second Michael film, it's critical for the production to be pragmatic and bold to show all of the important events in Michael's life. It can't be denied. And I believe that Michael's difficult childhood may have affected me, especially in the first film, this recent film. And Paris, her daughter, was right. Not everything was shown, and many aspects were altered. For instance, the dynamics of sibling rivalry and jealousy were completely omitted, which is likely true, especially since we see that Michael was a bit lonely, right? So I think there was jealousy and sibling rivalry in there. Additionally, John Branca was portrayed as a positive figure, and he was at some point, yes. The storyline could be addressed and improved in a sequel, provided that the estate is willing to confront the past and acknowledge their flawed but human actions. The Jackson patriarch, Joe Jackson's dictatorship was fully demonstrated, but not as heavily expressed And this is not because of a lack of acting or direction, but I think perhaps because of a lack of intention behind it. And by the way, Coleman Domingo was perfect as well. I really love him. And he and Jaafar deserve Golden Globe and Oscar nominations for their roles. So before we move on to the next discussion, I want to offer some explanation first. I haven't gathered enough courage to say what I'm about to express, so I need to justify all of my thoughts, beliefs, and the way I process them. I believe that I am a sensible person and that I don't easily get swayed by conspiracy theories or propaganda. However, I have been an activist in my own right, and I'm keenly aware of society's class divide. And many of my writings address issues related to class and propaganda. You have no idea how many times the media has disillusioned me. It's not just that the traditional or mainstream media outlets are paid to spread propaganda, but because they're actually owned by the richest and most controlling people in the world. So, according to a study by Oxfam in January 2026, more than half of the world's largest media companies are controlled by billionaires. And these are not just Jeff Bezos buying Washington Post, but the secret old rich that have been the owners of mainstream media for the longest time. And this ownership concentration allows the ultra wealthy to translate money into political influence by shaping public debate, setting news agendas, marginalizing dissenting voices, and normalizing policies that favor the rich. Oxfam warns that the danger isn't always direct censorship, but subtle influence over which stories are prioritized and whose voices are heard, often through opaque algorithms. I researched the Oxfam Study and many other similar reports to support my critical assessment of the media. Both the global and my country's media have disillusioned me since 2008. As the years have passed, my disappointment has only deepened. Since that time, I have been cynical about the news, yet I still hold on to hope, waiting for a moment when they prove me otherwise. So I just shared that study to justify my thoughts in the following discussions, which include a Candace Owens video where she demonstrates all the heinous work of the deep state against MJ. While Owens' take might be conspiratorial, it aligns with the patterns of power I see in the world today. But of course, watch till the end because I also exposed that Michael was no saint. So I'm just gonna be fair in this video, okay? I knew that the Jackson family was involved in the production of Michael, along with some of Michael's not so favorite people. Janet and Paris are opposed to the project because of the reasons I just mentioned, as well as their dislike for the way Michael's legacy is being exploited. On the other hand, Prince and Katherine hold quite a neutral stand on the matter. And personally, I also align with the neutral side. I understand where Paris and Janet are coming from, and I agree that some people may be motivated by financial gains. However, I believe that Michael stands to gain more than lose from the situation. Since watching the movie, I've discussed it extensively with my sister, which has filled my feed with, endless content about Michael Jackson, his legacy, and his contributions to humanity. Topics I'm well versed in and will elaborate on shortly. And I've also reflected on the negative treatment he received from the media and his detractors. And like many of his fans, I'm glad that we're talking about Michael again. I remember the days leading up to his supposed 2009 to 2010 concert, This Is It. And as I delved into various videos and articles about Michael, I found reasons to believe in his innocence. And despite being part of the elite circle and having acquaintances or, just pictures with Trump or Epstein, it was clear that he wasn't particularly close to them. In the end, Michael remained defiant against the system. And the child molestation and sexual abuse accusations have been around since the 90s, but in 2005, He was acquitted of all 14 charges against him. Apart from that, Macaulay Culkin stood by his friend and denied all the rumors. I'm not saying that I fully believe Michael because, of course, we can never be certain. But based on the videos I've seen, I saw Michael in full defiance of the powers that be. In many of his speeches, he exposed the exploitation that record companies inflict on their artists, which is a very crucial issue. And that has been the system since time immemorial. And to this day, many artists are more than shortchanged. And Michael also talked about certain forces controlling the world. In her video, Michael Jackson the Truth, Candace Owens argues that Michael Jackson was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign orchestrated by powerful music industry figures after he began speaking out against exploitative record labels. Candace claims that the initial 1993 molestation allegations were fabricated by Dr. Evan Chandler, who she asserts drugged and coerced his son into a confession to extort Jackson for money. Owens further contends that the mainstream media weaponized wacko-jacko narratives and labels of anti-Semitism to dehumanize Michael despite his 2005 acquittal and a lack of physical evidence. Ultimately, she characterizes Jackson's financial decline and death as the result of a mafia-style industry retaliation designed to ruin his reputation and estate because he challenged the control of executives like Tommy Mottola. While all these are favorable to Michael Jackson, he was no saint. He might even be, allegedly somehow really smart or, and Candace Owens failed to inject this in her video. In 1995, Michael secured his 50% stake in Sony ATV Music Publishing, which includes the Beatles catalog. It was Paul McCartney who first told MJ about how lucrative it was to own artists' catalog, and so MJ went to secure Sony ATV, but without the intention of giving back his dear friend's music rights. And yes, that's where I didn't like Michael, and I think that somehow he is a hypocrite. And I just really, to be honest, I wish that he actually gave Paul McCartney his share of the Beatles catalog, but he didn't, apparently. And Paul McCartney had to fight for the catalog himself. Despite everything, I'm delighted that they produced Michael, and this is just the beginning of his story. And it's no surprise that we all felt that love for him. However, the challenge arises when they release the sequel, in which, according to an interview with Jaafar, is already in development, but they could face problems if Janet Jackson does not permit her portrayal like in the first film. And I'm actually praying and hoping that Janet would allow that. So while the first movie is all about feelings for me, and it was so heartwarming, I love it, I expect the second film to be bold and gritty, to show all the good and the bad of Michael, as well as the people who surrounded him. If not, well, I can hardly wait to be extra critical about it. So thank you for listening to my yap, and I want to ask you what you think of all the things I discussed. Are there any part of which you agree or disagree? Please let me know in the comments, or do I need to be informed? Please comment them below. And this is a relatively new channel, so if you like what I'm doing here, then please subscribe. Thank you so much.